The night air was buzzing, the city lights of downtown Los Angeles painting the sky in shades of electric blue and neon pink. I was at this swanky rooftop party, thanks to a friend who knows a guy who knows another guy. That's when I saw him, Alex. Charismatic doesn't even start to cover it. The guy had a vibe that could light up the entire city. And there I was, drawn like a moth to a flame, convincing myself a little harmless flirting never hurt anybody, right? Married life with Tom, on the other hand, was a whole different story. Tom's an investment banker, the kind with a permanent phone attachment and an emotional range of a teaspoon. Our conversations had become as thrilling as watching paint dry. So, when Alex and I exchanged numbers, I told myself it was all in the name of networking for my interior design gig. Professional curiosity, nothing more. But who was I kidding? When Alex texted me about this exclusive art gallery opening in Santa Monica, I didn't think twice. The night was alive with colors, the champagne flowed like rivers, and there was Alex, in the midst of it all, making me feel like I was the only one in the room. It was intoxicating, being with someone who actually seemed interested in what I had to say, not just nodding along while checking his stocks. Before I knew it, one thing led to another, and I ended up at his place in Venice Beach. It was reckless, thrilling, and completely out of character for me. Lying there, with the dawn breaking, reality started to creep in. What the hell was I doing? This wasn't me. I wasn't this person. I gathered my things, leaving behind a sleeping Alex and a piece of my conscience. The guilt hit me like a freight train on my way back home. I deleted every trace of our conversation, every selfie we took, every flirty emoji. As if that could erase what happened. But then, Tom threw me a curveball, a weekend getaway to Napa Valley, just the two of us. It was supposed to be romantic, a chance to reconnect. And for a moment, amidst the vineyards and the wine tastings, I almost forgot about my slip-up. Almost. Tom opened up during that trip, said he felt us drifting apart and promised to be more present. Guilt washed over me again, heavier this time. Here was my husband, trying to mend whatever was left of our bond, and there I was, nursing a hangover of betrayal. What kind of person does that make me? That weekend in Napa was a wake-up call. I had to make a choice, and deep down, I knew it. But knowing something and acting on it are two different things. As we headed back to the reality of our lives, I couldn't help but wonder if the spark we rekindled in Napa was enough to light our way through the darkness I had brought upon us. The decision wasn't easy. Felt like pulling the plug on something that hadn't even had the chance to fully come to life. But it was the right thing to do, or so I kept telling myself. So, I typed out the message to Alex, my fingers trembling as I hit send. This can't go on. It was a mistake. I need to focus on my marriage. There, I said it. Or well, texted it. Felt like a coward's way out, but facing Alex in person? I couldn't trust myself to not fall right back into his arms. Alex's response came faster than I anticipated, a flood of messages that pinged one after the other. Please, don't do this. I've never felt this way about anyone, he wrote, among other things. His words, each one more desperate than the last, gnawed at me. Was I making a mistake? No. Focus on Tom, I reminded myself. Yet, Alex's plea was a siren call I couldn't ignore. One last time, I convinced myself. To end things properly. We met at a discreet hotel in downtown LA, the kind of place that promised anonymity and thrived on the secrets of others. The intention was clear. Say goodbye and close this chapter. But the moment I saw Alex, all my resolve melted away. What was supposed to be a final conversation turned into another night of passion, erasing any semblance of commitment I had towards repairing my marriage. Returning home, the silence was deafening. Tom was there, waiting in the living room, the hotel receipt clutched in his hand like a verdict. What is this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper but loaded with an intensity that made my heart sink. The receipt was damning evidence, a token of my betrayal. I confessed, the words tumbling out in a jumbled mess of apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But Tom, he just stood there, his face a mask of heartbreak and fury. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out. The door closed with a finality that echoed through the empty house, leaving me to drown in a sea of remorse. The next morning, the reality of my actions came crashing down with the arrival of divorce papers. Tom was cutting ties, swift and uncompromising, citing my infidelity as the sole reason. The papers felt cold in my hands, a tangible representation of the ruin I had brought upon us. Our marriage, once a source of comfort and love, reduced to legal documents and signatures. Sitting alone in the house we had built together, the weight of my choices bore down on me. I had destroyed everything for a fleeting connection, mistaking excitement for happiness. The silence was a stark reminder of the void Tom's departure left in my life, a void I had created with my own hands. The path to reconciliation was closed, the damage irreparable. The future, once filled with shared dreams and possibilities, now loomed before me, dark and uncertain. The divorce was nothing short of a battlefield, and Tom made sure he had the upper hand every step of the way. He wielded his financial clout like a weapon, ensuring that when the dust settled, I was left with barely enough to start over. Every meeting with the lawyers felt like another round in a boxing match where I was outclassed and outmatched. Feeling like the world had turned its back on me, I reached out to Alex, hoping to find some solace or at least a distraction from the wreckage of my life. But the warmth and passion that once drew me to him had cooled off. He was distant, his messages sporadic and noncommittal. The thrill of our secret affair had evaporated, leaving behind a stark reality I wasn't prepared for. Bitterness took root in my heart. Seeing Tom move through the proceedings with such cold efficiency, I felt a burning need to make him feel some of the pain he'd inflicted on me. In a moment of madness, I decided to hit him where it hurt the most, his career. I had access to his company's sensitive information, remnants of a time when we shared everything with each other. Without fully grasping the consequences, I sent an anonymous tip to one of his competitors, thinking it would be a minor setback for him at most. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Tom's company launched an investigation that, with alarming efficiency, traced the leak back to me. Digital breadcrumbs I hadn't even considered led straight to my doorstep. The realization of what I'd done, and the enormity of the consequences, hit me like a freight train. The knock on my door came at dawn, with officers ready to arrest me for corporate espionage. The words felt alien, yet there I was, being handcuffed and read my rights. The look of shock and betrayal on my neighbors' faces as I was led away is something I'll never forget. The news spread like wildfire, my name and face plastered across local outlets as the story of my fall from grace became public fodder. In desperation, I reached out to Alex, hoping for some form of support or escape. But I was met with silence. His final message was a cold goodbye, cutting off any remaining ties we had. He was protecting his own reputation, leaving me to face the consequences alone. The realization that I was truly isolated, with no one left to turn to, was more painful than any punishment the law could mete out. Sitting in a holding cell, waiting for what came next, I couldn't help but replay the series of decisions that brought me here. The pursuit of excitement, the betrayal of my marriage, the desperate attempt at revenge. It all seemed like a distant dream, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The stark reality of my situation was a lesson in the harshest terms about the consequences of our actions, a lesson I was learning far too late. The courtroom was icy, the air thick with tension and unspoken accusations. There he was, Tom, taking the stand with a determination that chilled me to the bone. His gaze met mine, cold and vengeful, a clear message that the man I once shared my life with was gone, replaced by a stranger driven by the need for justice. His testimony was calm, measured, and utterly devastating. Every word felt like a nail sealing the coffin of our shared past. The verdict came down like a hammer, guilty. I was sentenced to probation and a fine that might as well have been a mountain for all I could afford it. The judge's words were a blur, but the reality was crystal clear. I was alone, bankrupt, and branded with a scarlet letter that screamed my guilt to the world. Tom wasted no time moving on, leaving the state for a fresh start. The news reached me through the grapevine, a bitter pill to swallow as I faced the desolation of my own making. In a last-ditch effort to bridge the chasm between us, I poured my heart into a letter to Tom, begging for forgiveness and a chance to explain. The reply was a cold splash of reality, brief, impersonal, and unequivocal. He had moved on, and I was a chapter firmly closed. Now, I find myself in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, a far cry from the life of comfort and love I once took for granted. The walls are bare, the space cramped, a daily reminder of how far I've fallen. My attempts to claw my way back into the world of interior design are met with polite refusals or outright rejections. The scandal that surrounds my name is a barrier I can't seem to breach, a shadow that dims the light of my creativity and ambition. In moments of loneliness, I reach out to the friends who once filled my life with laughter and companionship, only to be met with silence or awkward excuses. The social circle that I once thought unbreakable has dissolved, leaving me on the outside looking in. The realization that I am truly alone, without the career that defined me or the friends who supported me, is a blow that leaves me reeling. Each day is a struggle, a battle to find some semblance of purpose in the wreckage. The vibrant, confident woman I once was seems like a stranger, a ghost of a life that slipped through my fingers. The weight of my choices and the consequences they wrought is a constant companion, a reminder of the cost of betrayal and the price of a moment's passion. As I navigate this new, barren landscape of my life, the lessons are hard-earned and bitter. The path to redemption is unclear, obscured by the shadow of my past actions. Yet, even in the depths of despair, there is a glimmer of determination, a stubborn refusal to be defined by my mistakes. The journey ahead is uncertain, fraught with challenges and devoid of the comfort of companionship. But it is a path I must walk, one step at a time, in search of forgiveness, from others and, most importantly, from myself. In the maze of rebuilding a life shattered by my own decisions, I stumbled upon a support group for people like me, souls haunted by their past, seeking solace among shared stories of regret. Sitting in a circle, listening to tales that echoed my own, I found a fragile sense of belonging. It was a balm, however temporary, for the sting of isolation. A year had passed since the divorce when I saw it, a photo of Tom on social media, smiling beside his new wife. The happiness radiating from the image was a stark contrast to the shadows that lingered in my own life. It felt like a punch to the gut, the final confirmation that he had moved on, while I was still picking up the pieces of the life we once shared. Encouraged by my brief moments of connection in the support group, I ventured back into the world of dating. But each attempt faltered before it could truly begin. The men I met couldn't see past the scandal that clung to me, a barrier to any genuine connection. My past was a specter that scared away any possibility of a future. The stark reality of my situation hit home during an unexpected encounter with a former client. Recognition flickered in their eyes, quickly followed by a cold withdrawal of their greeting. The message was clear. I was a social pariah, my professional reputation in ruins. The encounter was a painful reminder of the cost of my choices, felt in the silence of friends and the doors closed to me. With dwindling options, I took a job in retail, a world away from the dreams I once harbored as an interior designer. Each day was a lesson in humility, serving customers who glanced through me, unaware of the fall from grace I had endured. The job was a lifeline, but it was also a daily reminder of how far I had fallen. Fate, it seemed, wasn't done with me. One ordinary morning, as I sipped a coffee in a shop I had come to frequent for its anonymity, I saw him, Alex. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world stood still. But the encounter was as brief as it was awkward. The chemistry that once ignited between us was extinguished, leaving behind a discomfort that spoke volumes. We were strangers, bound only by a past best forgotten. I tried reaching out to Alex, driven by a loneliness that clouded my judgment. But it was clear he had moved on, our connection as transient as the passion that once defined it. The door was firmly closed, another bridge burned in the wake of my decisions. The isolation took its toll, a weight that pressed down on me with each passing day. I found myself sitting in a therapist's office, seeking help for the depression that had taken root in the absence of light. It was a step I had long resisted, a concession to the depth of my despair. But in the quiet of that room, facing the compassionate gaze of someone trained to help, I found a flicker of hope. Therapy was a journey back to myself, a path through the wilderness of guilt and regret. It offered no quick fixes, but it did provide a space to untangle the web of emotions that bound me. The road to healing was long and fraught with setbacks, but it was a road I was finally ready to walk. Sitting in the therapist's office, surrounded by soft lights and calming colors, I faced a challenge unlike any I'd encountered before: forgiveness. Not just seeking it from those I'd wronged, but granting it to myself. It was a daunting task, one that required me to confront the darkest parts of my story head-on. As part of my journey toward healing, I found myself drawn to volunteering at a local shelter. There was something deeply humbling and incredibly healing about serving those who had nothing to give in return. Each day spent feeding, cleaning, and caring for the homeless and their pets offered a stark perspective on my own troubles. It was here, among the forgotten and the forsaken, that I began to find a semblance of redemption. It was during one of these volunteer shifts that I met Anna. She was a volunteer like me, but her story was a mirror to my own. A life derailed by poor choices and a heart aching for forgiveness. Our shared pain became the foundation of an unexpected friendship. For the first time since my world had crumbled, I found someone who understood the depth of my regret and the longing for a second chance. Anna and I became each other's support system, sharing our stories and the lessons we'd learned along the way. There was strength in our shared experiences, a bond forged in the fires of our respective downfalls. It was a reminder that, no matter how isolated I felt, I wasn't alone in my struggle to rebuild. Slowly, with each passing day, I began to piece together the fragments of my life. My goals were modest: maintain my therapy sessions, volunteer regularly, and find moments of joy in the everyday. It was a stark contrast to the ambitions that once drove me, but in this simplicity, I found a profound sense of purpose. One of the most significant steps on my path to recovery was adopting a rescue dog. Bella, with her boundless energy and unwavering loyalty, brought a light into my life I hadn't known I was missing. She needed me as much as I needed her, and in caring for her, I found a love that was unconditional and pure. Inspired by my journey and the stories of those I met along the way, I started a blog. It began as a personal project, a way to document my path from loss to redemption. But as I shared my experiences, the blog grew into something more, a community of souls connected by our shared struggles. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with readers sharing their own stories of downfall and recovery. It was a reminder that, in our vulnerability, we find our strongest connections. Each post, each comment, each shared moment of empathy added a brick to the foundation I was building. My life, once defined by my mistakes, was slowly taking on a new shape, one defined by growth, forgiveness, and the pursuit of a better self. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time, I felt equipped to face it, armed with the lessons of my past and the hope for a future reborn from the ashes of my former life. The day my blog hit its first 1,000 followers felt surreal. Here I was, a woman who'd once thought she'd lost everything, now finding a voice and a community that resonated with my journey towards redemption. My posts, once a personal form of therapy, had blossomed into a platform advocating for second chances and the beauty of personal growth. Each comment, each share, each message of thanks was a testament to the power of sharing our stories, no matter how flawed. But success, no matter how modest, didn't erase the scars that crisscrossed my soul. The nights were the hardest, when the silence brought my demons out to play. Doubts would dance in the shadows, whispering that I was still the person who made those mistakes. Therapy became my battleground, where I fought against the tide of self-recrimination, armed with the tools my therapist gave me to build a healthier relationship with myself. One of the biggest challenges came when I decided to attend a local art show, the first since everything had fallen apart. Art had always been a passion, a connection to Alex that I couldn't seem to sever. Walking into the gallery, my heart raced, memories flooding back with every brushstroke and color palette. But I stood my ground, facing those memories head on, using the moment as a step towards closure, towards reclaiming a part of myself that I'd lost in the chaos. My therapist, seeing the progress in the setbacks, suggested a forgiveness ritual. The idea was to confront the guilt that had become my constant companion, to offer forgiveness to myself and those I'd hurt. It was a daunting task, but one that felt necessary if I was ever going to truly move on. So, there I was, on a beach as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky ablaze with oranges and pinks. I had written letters to Tom, to Alex, to my friends, and most importantly, to myself. Each letter was a confession, an apology, and a step towards forgiveness. One by one, I burned them, watching as the flames consumed the words, the smoke carrying away the weight of my guilt. It was symbolic, yes, but in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of nature's own canvas, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The ritual didn't magically erase the past, nor did it mend the bridges I'd burned. But it did offer a sense of peace, a moment of grace in a journey marked by tumult. It was a recognition that, while my mistakes were a part of me, they did not define me. I could acknowledge the pain caused, learn from it, and still hold on to hope for the future. As I watched the last embers fade into the sand, I felt a chapter of my life closing. The journey from the depths of despair to the tentative steps towards healing had been long and fraught with challenges. Yet, here I was, still standing, still striving. My past actions would always be a part of my story, but they would not dictate my future. With humility and a newfound sense of hope, I looked towards the horizon, ready to embark on the next chapter of my life. The road ahead was uncharted, the destination unknown. But I was determined to walk it with integrity, to build a life that reflected the lessons learned and the person I was becoming. It was a promise to myself, a vow made under the watchful eye of a setting sun, that while the specter of my past might linger, it would not hold